We are starting off cold here, or our cold open, as I like to say, where we're going to address all the issues in 60 seconds that are around securing code. I have Mackenzie Jackson and DJ Schleen here with me, and they're going to try to come up with as many as they possibly can. Gentlemen, you ready? Mackenzie, you're first. Get ready. It's just a 3-second countdown before we start.
Hard-coded API keys.
Supply chain attacks.
Misconfigured private code repositories.
Unsigned commits.
Exposed cryptography weaknesses.
Secrets in code.
Vulnerability dependencies.
Sensitive data exposure.
Poor access control for code repositories.
Unsanitized input.
Exposed business logic flaws.
False positive scanning results.
Data dump within source code repositories.
High cyclomatic complexity.
Sensitive developer comments.
Use of eval in JavaScript.
Insecure hashing algorithms.
Over-architecting.
10 seconds.
Source code sprawl.
Certificate pinning missing for mobile apps.
Exposed endpoints and file structure.
How do we do, Andrew?
We got a total of 21 with Mackenzie at 11 and DJ at 10.
Oh! Mackenzie wins. Let's begin.
Welcome, everybody. The CISO series video chat is
All right,
ready
everybody.
to begin.
We're starting the show. This is going to be actually our last show for a couple of weeks because the CISO series is moving, meaning I'm moving. And so next one will be not until August 13th. So thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic is hacking code, an hour of critical thinking on avoiding self-harming code. You can create your own problems, and that's what we're going to try to avoid doing. Our guests today are Mackenzie Jackson, who's the developer advocate for GitGuardian, and also DJ Schleen, director of DevSecOps over at VillageMD. Huge thanks to our sponsors. I need to refresh, Andrew says. I'm refreshing. Reloading. I'm back. All right. GitGuardian. Can people see me? Can we see me now? Yes? Tap to unmute sound. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear.
Hear you.
All right. Everybody hears me. Okay, good. I don't know what happened there. I didn't see anything wrong. All right. Our sponsor is GitGuardian. Thank you. Our sponsor is GitGuardian. Let me share my screen again. I wanted to show this. Whoops. Fixed. Problems fixed. Thank you. Our sponsor is GitGuardian. Sorry for that little error, however that happened. I have no idea. All right, 6 different ways to participate. For those of you who are regulars, you know this. Just get involved in the chat room. Submit your bad ideas. So for those who never joined us before, what we do is we play a game called The Best Bad Idea, where you try to come up with the worst way to solve the issue around insecure code. So just to bad idea : and I see Neil Saltman's already got one. Only use crowdsource code. Good one, Craig Herder. And require all users to use dial-up internet so any issues with code can be fixed before the users know it's a problem. Oh, I like that one. Good one. All right. Submit your best strategies also. You can do that. Just say good idea : And anytime you can join us on video if you'd like. If you just type bring me on all in caps, Andrew, our producer, will try to bring as many of you on as it possibly can. Ask a question at any time. We already have one question already. And you can also vote for your favorite question if there's one you would like to make sure that we answer. Today's schedule, you just saw the speed round, and then your bad ideas and questions, get them in. The poll will go live at 20 minutes past the hour of the bad ideas. Vote for your favorite bad idea. And also at this time, let's hear your best strategies. You can give that to us anytime. At 30 minutes past the hour, we will play the Department of Yes. That means they will have to say yes to some of your horrible ideas. So you will want to vote on the one you want to see if they can actually say yes to. Vote for your favorite questions. You can do that really anytime. And then at 40 minutes past the hour, the two people that I chose, or the two bad ideas, the people who wrote them, they will come on camera and defend why their bad idea truly is the worst bad idea. Kind of like a what's worse game, but a real face-off. Then last question and final advice. And then finally, we will have our meetup, which if you've never participated in that, it's a ton of fun. Just one-on-one engagement with another cybersecurity professional. It's completely random, and it's just fun. You get 5 meetings in a half hour. Please stick around for that. We will provide the link to do that just at the very end of the show. All right, next chat is not going to be until 2 weeks from now, August 13th, because one is I'm moving. Second is there's going to be Black Hat and DEF CON. So the next one will be Hacking Cloud Infrastructure, an hour of critical thinking about how identity is your front line of defense for your infrastructure. Guess what? There's a link at the very bottom of the screen to register for that. You can click on that at any time during this chat. It will not take you out of this chat. It'll allow you to register for it while you're still in this chat. Go ahead and do that because everyone who registers early for the chat automatically gets entered into a raffle to win an awesome CISO series fleece. Another way you can win that is coming up with the best bad idea, which we don't announce now. We announce usually the following Tuesday. And then last thing is stick around for the meetup. Oh, that link is not there, so we'll stop there. All right. Thank you for your patience listening to me go through all of that. We're back in business right now. Here, I'm going to center that back on me. All right. Let's start with the opening question here, and that's for you. I'm going to start with you, DJ. What are the common mistakes, of which, by the way, you addressed many of them at the very beginning, the common mistakes that are being made in private code? What do you think are the big issues we need to worry about?
Well, I think the biggest one is insecure secrets. People are putting API keys, for AWS or whatever inside of their source code, just so that when they check it out on another machine, the other developers that are using it don't have to configure their system, right? I think that's a big one. One of the problems with that is, every private repository is one click away from being public. And if that happens and you start open sourcing code, even if the secret's not in that code currently, it's in the history. So people can just scan through the history of the Git repository and find it really easily.
Ah, that is a good point. They're one click away from being public. Have you seen this, Mackenzie?
Absolutely. And I think there's another kind of point to think about here, and that is that particularly when we're talking about GitHub, it's unique in the fact that we use the same account for personal and professional projects. So it's quite easy to mistake repositories. So you could have a public repository that you use personally and you're dealing with private code. The confusion of how we use our accounts can really kind of contribute to that public code ending up into the wrong repository.
All right. So, by the way, get your questions in. By the way, it's nothing but an endless stream of bad ideas. I love it. Thank you very much.
They're great. So far, I'm looking at them going now.
Yeah, these
are great.
These are going to be pretty tough to handle. Holy moly, there are a lot of coming in right now. All right, we just talked about private code. Now, public code, I think there's some obvious issues here, but let's, Mackenzie, just start with the big headlines, like the most obvious issues with public code, and let's work down, because so often, so many of these breaches have been accessed through, the fact there was some use of public code, and most often through third parties.
Yeah, so there's a couple of points that we can think about when it comes to public code. One of the top ones that I talk to a lot of developers about in particular is the idea that your code's not just public, it's really broadcast. So GitHub, for example, has a public API. Any commit that you make, any change that you make to your repository, whether you go from private to public, is broadcast on this API. So when we understand that obviously sensitive information shouldn't be in a public repository, but we can kind of hide behind this idea that no one's going to find it, that it's kind of buried under the millions of repositories on GitHub. But the reality is that it's broadcast through multiple channels, and malicious actors know this as good as anyone else, and they can monitor these. So it's not just a matter of it kind of ending up in a public repository and hoping for no one to find it. It's very public. It's broadcast in a way.
What ugly situations are you seeing, DJ, in this case?
Well, there's a ton of them. When we have open source components that we're using and we're publishing it, we have the same visibility as as contributors to these open source projects as the attackers do. right? So they know our code even better than we do. They've pulled it down, they fuzzed it, they've looked for vulnerabilities, and then they've also looked at the dependencies of the dependencies of the dependencies, right? Mm-hmm. So you might take one component into your application. It's a private app. And that open source component has 15 repositories. A good example of that is I, a couple of years ago, brought 2 libraries into a Go application. And when I refreshed it and brought all the dependencies in, it turned into 154. So, there's more than just what you're pulling in. I think that's a common mistake for developers. But then 9 of those sub-dependencies had critical vulnerabilities. So if we start looking at it from that perspective, those are vulnerabilities or an exploit supply chain issue of things that can get into your code base that you got to be aware of. So there's quite a large problem around that right now.
All right. By the way, Mackenzie, do me a favor, looking into your actual lens. You're looking at us, and there you go. They're looking in your lens. There you go. Much better. Okay. So this is an issue that I've written a lot about. I've talked to a lot of CISOs on. It seems so monumental a problem because of the layers deep it goes down. Let me just start with you, Mackenzie. Where do you start, and how far down the layers can you go? Is it possible to go, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about kind of what DJ had mentioned of kind of dependencies on dependencies. I mean,
right. Yeah, that's why I'm referencing that. But I'm more talking about how do we begin to solve this problem, and how far can we go down the dependencies upon dependencies upon dependencies? What's realistic? Because every time you're dealing with dependency, it's just it's a tree branching out and out. And so the problem today, which is bad, becomes double tomorrow, 10 times the next day. At each level, it just gets to a level that it's not humanly possible to fix, even possibly with automation. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you were talking about this, we need to make sure that our dependencies are completely up to date, patched regularly. Mm-hmm. We're using the latest version, and we can use tools for this. We're never going to get to a point where we're 100% secure, and we can never get to a point where we absolutely are 100% certain that the dependencies that we have aren't going to introduce vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. But we can use automated tools. There's great ones out there to make sure that our dependencies and our dependencies of dependencies don't have any publicly listed vulnerabilities, or at the very least be aware of what they are before going forward. So, I mean, the critical part about it is our disclosed vulnerabilities, the ones that everyone knows about. Because if we're using vulnerable components and an attacker knows that we're using these vulnerable components, I mean, it can be as simple as downloading the exploit and running that, and away they go.
Yeah, to follow up on that, knowing the dependencies and going down, you can go right down to the bottom, of the seabed. And there's an application or a standard for bill of materials that's Cyclone DX. We use it a lot at VillageMD. I've been using it in a open source project group called DKFM, and it will look at all your source code and generate all your licenses, all your dependencies, the sub-dependencies, and the relationships. And the nice thing about that is it gives you that ingredient list. So it's like looking at a can of beans and seeing, hey, it's gluten-free, doesn't contain wheat, sugar is 15 grams. And, this is what we start to require for software. In fact, Joe Biden put out an executive order talking about bill of materials being required for software. So it's starting to get to the forefront of things we really need to address. We have to know what's in the food we're eating. We have to know what's in the software we're creating, right? And then from that, we can detect the vulnerabilities. But the other issue about the vulnerabilities is just because we find it doesn't mean we remediate them. Right. It's, and there's some things that we can't because maybe it's a library that's not used anymore. We can't upgrade it. It's so far down the dependency tree. So I think there's a lot of things that we still need to figure out as a collective industry around managing those kind of vulnerabilities.
All right. So we got questions that have come in right now. And Matthew actually asked a question that I was going to plan on asking. So I'm glad he's asking. So this is really about what level can we push developers? Because developers, just in terms of their coding work, need to know a lot and have to constantly taking on constantly new languages. So how do we improve our secure development issues? Is this actually happening, or should companies push universities and code camps to require secure coding practices in their programs? So to get a certificate, there needs to be a certain level of secure coding in that. A, have you seen it? B, like I don't know if any of these things are accredited, these code camp things, and universities are, but are there any sort of requirements at universities? I have no idea, but what have you talked to? I'm guessing you, Mackenzie, talked to these companies that do the education. What have you found out in terms of their secure level of instruction?
Yeah, we've seen huge shifts in the amount of interest that developers are finding in security. And a lot of this comes down to the fact of, one, these educational instruments, but they're using the tools of kind of the practical examples of how to show how this happens. When a developer can see how code is exploited, then it changes everything. But these, as you say, aren't often always included into the courses. And it comes down to that kind of traditional distinction of builder breaker that we put in. But the whole movement of shift left, of DevSecOps, is about bringing us in to the kind of developers' education and the software development lifecycle much sooner. So we are seeing a shift in this. And the best way to kind of continue the shift, if we move away from the educational part of it, because if the question, should this be included, it's a resounding yes from me that we should include this.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine you'd say no to it.
No. But if we look at the organizational part of this, right, so one of the best ways to get developers interested in it is to actually include them in the remediation process. We don't want to see, okay, you've included a hard-coded secret in this branch that's been merged and it's created a security vulnerability, slap on the wrist, bad you. Bring them into the whole remediation process, understand what goes into revoking these types of credentials as one example, how we solve these and why it's a threat, because a developer might not even understand why a credential in a private code repository is a threat. And I think that the shift left, the DevSecOps, all these movements that we're seeing have increased interest, awareness in this. I'm not sure if you agree, DJ, but
Hold this thought for just a second. I just want to remind people you got 3 minutes to get your bad ideas in, and the poll will go up in just a moment. And if you have not clicked the link at the bottom of the screen to register for, actually in 3 weeks, not 2 weeks, 3 weeks for our next video chat, please do that. Okay, I'm sorry, DJ, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I've been involved in the DevOps community for about 10 years now. It's only 11 years old. And really it's just, moving back to the essentials of creating software. And then DevSecOps, by definition, that's only been around really as a term for about 6-7 years. But by definition, it's like everyone's responsible for security. So if you look at that definition, then the term DevSecOps, it doesn't or shouldn't even exist, right? So if you start looking at what we're learning in schools and educational institutions, we should be just embedding security as just part of everything we do. So, with that, like defensive coding strategies, as we're teaching, the next generation of developers and engineers how to code, we need to be thinking about these things right out of the gate. I think as an industry, we're, looking at being more responsive and reactive to security issues, where we got to get proactive around it. If you show any student how to get a shell, and exploit and actually execute an exploit, their eyes get wide open. And they're like, wow, that was easy. So it just puts, almost the fear in the heart of the engineer, right?
Here's an interesting question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mackenzie.
I was just going to say, just to DJ's point, one of my favorite examples to do is there's a great service called canarytokens.org, and you can just generate a fake AWS key or Slack token or whatever. And you can push this into a public repository and monitor the IP addresses of people trying to exploit it in real life. And within an hour, you'll have 5 or 6 people are trying to exploit an AWS key. You've put it in a public repository. It just illustrates to developers that, it's that putting the fear in them of showing what's actually possible, that it's not some avant-garde genius that with a hoodie on in the mum's basement. No, these are sophisticated things, sophisticated almost companies that are doing this, that are running at mass scale.
And by the way, Dan Walsh, who's your colleague, DJ, mentioned something that I think we all know and we've heard, because of the people who developers are. They want to be, they want to create quality code. And so, he just, the essentially the the transitive property of secure code equals quality code equals developers don't want to be notorious for being low quality engineers, which is, I mean, I got to assume that's kind of what they want. All right. We got some more questions have come in. And by the way, an endless number of bad ideas. And we're 20 minutes past the hour. So the poll is about to go up. Andrew will get that up in a second. And then second, get your good ideas in. So you can still get bad ideas in because you'll still be eligible possibly to win the CISO Series fleece, which, oh, by the way, if you're on the list of someone to receive the fleece and you haven't received one in a while, guess what? They're finally going out again. And I'm actually wearing the new style jacket. It's not going to be black. It's going to be charcoal gray. But apologies for all those delays on that. So get your good ideas in as well. And the poll is up. Okay. Let's go to the next question. I'm sorry. The next question here is, here's an interesting one from Rustam Bunyatov, who asks, what do you think about threat modeling exercise as a way to establish security by design? You smiled to that, DJ. Yes?
Well, threat modeling is great if people actually do it.
Okay. Tell us a good way to actually do it with some developers.
Well, I've seen a lot of Fortune 10 companies pass some spreadsheets around in Excel and hope for the best. But
how does that work? A spreadsheet passed around. What is on this spreadsheet?
Oh man, it's columns of you're doing a AWS web service, and so are these the attack vectors? Check here, yes. But there's really no way to consolidate that from a security organization perspective. Actually, say where is my risk? And then from a developer perspective, they don't want to access a spreadsheet, right? Mm-hmm. There's some automated tools that are out there that'll walk you through and say, okay, based on you selecting that. You're creating a web service. Here are, the attack vectors that you'll want to take into consideration. And then they plug into some of the scanning tools and they auto close tickets and that kind of thing. So, we start getting automated ways of looking at the problem. And, I would rather have a 80% done threat model in an automated way than 100% done threat model in a non-validatable way. It's a tough challenge, right? And I think that is one of the, threat modeling is one of the places where a lot of organizations are failing because the intention's there, but the execution is poor.
Have you seen good execution, Mackenzie, with threat modeling?
So, one of the great executions that I saw of threat modeling was they kind of made it into a much more fun interactive event, and they called it malicious brainstorming or something along this idea is where, when you sometimes if you kind of take something out of what is in its box and it becomes a very security focused thing, you make it interactive and fun, and then people want to be able to come up with these ideas of how to kind of do this malicious actions. From a developer point of view, it's really a powerful tool. And it can be really effective because everything kind of changes, and developers can form this confirmation bias of how something works and going through it. And threat modeling is a great exercise to really just break everyone out of that rapidly to these new ideas that stay with them when they're going through it. So, it is a powerful tool for developers, for sure, and it can be done really well.
All right. Let me just remind everybody to please vote for the best bad ideas. There are a ton that are in here as well, and we've got a ton more questions. So quick answer here, and let's try to try to burn through these questions as possible. DJ, go ahead.
When we're looking at the threat modeling comments that Mackenzie just made, I think that engaging the developers with security and AppSec helps them think about that defense, and it ties back to that education, right? If you talk to somebody about a vulnerability, they're like, that's not real. It's like, well, yeah, it is real, but having the ability to actually demonstrate it and execute it with the developers, I think then they have a bigger appreciation for the things that are in that threat model, and they'll actually take that. And it'll be easier to actually do that going forward with different projects that they'll be working on. All
right. Questions that have come in. All right. Let me ask this one. Larry Rosen asked this question, and interested to know, just don't need to go too deep into this, but do you believe that Microsoft's acquisition of GitHub has been a net positive or negative for code security? Have they helped or hurt or done a lot of nothing, Mackenzie?
I was really hoping this one's going to go to DJ first. I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay, DJ, go ahead.
I'm all over that. Yeah, at first everybody was like, "What the heck?" Like it was like the massive company taking over, something that was near and dear to a lot of developers' hearts. I think it's done nothing but good things. And one of the reasons why is GitHub Advanced Security. It's something that we use. They had a couple of acquisitions that came after that, after Microsoft acquired them, like SAML being one of them. A couple of weeks ago, I was contributing code, and it picked up like invalid regexes and said, "Hey, you know what? This regex doesn't capture everything that you intended to capture." So not just security, but actually code-related things that could eventually have, a validation issue, security vulnerability, like, when you have validation being a problem. So, catching those things, even though they don't look like security, are security. But from an acquisition perspective, I think that the feature set of GitHub has expanded. It's still autonomous. I think that people are starting to take Git more seriously, especially when it comes to some of Microsoft's traditional code repositories and build processes. Having people move to GitHub makes more sense. And the free version for open source and even like for private repositories, I think gets people in there so that they can actually see some of these security tools like Dependabot and all these kind of things. So, big A plus from me. And
okay. All right.
Well, Jackson, let's see you get in trouble here.
You don't actually even have to answer because I got a ton more questions here. But do you have an answer on this?
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, overwhelmingly, I think GitHub's doing, it's a positive effect. I agree with DJ that when it happened, that there was definitely some skepticism, and I have some skepticism moving forward on certain features and where it's going to go. But I suppose that's just comes from kind of ideas, not really reality, I guess. But to DJ's point, just on security in GitHub, what's really interesting is that GitHub has had a recent focus in security that's gone through the roof kind of in the last couple of years. And we can see this is that when you look at how much it costs to run GitHub Enterprise per user, it's around about $20. But when you add security onto that, the price creeps up to $80. So the value that they put on security is a lot higher. So it means that they're really thinking about security and they've really built this into their business model going forward. And hopefully that should mean that the model is that the free version maintains and we get increased security over everything, and the large corporations kind of have these additional features that are useful for them that they pay for.
All right.
Yeah, I just noticed actually Sandeep and I think it's Jacob inside of the chat. We're talking about GitHub Copilot. That's about as trustworthy as self-driving Tesla cars on a highway. So buyer beware on that one.
All right. Let me. I want to switch into, because we have not actually talked about what you're doing at GitGuardian, Jackson, and I want to make sure that we get this in early rather than too late. So a lot of people may not be aware. I'm going to kind of set you up on this. We've done some stuff with GitGuardian before. They've been sponsors for the CISO series before. And the whole thing of uncovering secrets, finding secrets in both public and private code is really your bailiwick. And I didn't realize prior to talking to you about it, what a monstrous problem this is. And this seems like first level issue stuff of why are you creating this? Why are developers putting secrets in code? And B, geez, the fact that they are doing it, well, let's got to get it out. Hence, this is where you come in. Explain what you're doing at GitGuardian.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of two issues here, right? We can think about secrets inside private code repositories and then secrets inside public code repositories. If we just take the public code repositories, we've already addressed that it can be very easy to accidentally kind of unleash your code onto the world. So it becomes a very large issue in that sense. Secrets, like a company can have hundreds of, if not thousands of different secrets that they have to manage. It's really a difficult problem. And there's great tools out there like HashiCorp Vault that help that internal management of it, but they're hard to set up. They can be cumbersome to use and developers can bypass them. So, I mean, it comes down to, when you're talking about private repositories, it comes down to a lot of different factors. But considering Git a vault and assuming that your private code won't be made public is probably like one of the fundamental reasons why this problem becomes so large. Because I mean, managing secrets in Git is really comfortable because it's the single point of truth. It's widely distributed. It solves all these problems, but it's a massive security risk. If we switch over to now the public repositories, so GitGuardian last year we did a very large study on how many secrets are in public code repositories. And we did this by scanning every single public commit made on GitHub throughout the year of 2020. So it was over 1 billion commits. And in the end, we found over 2 million secrets from this. And that could range anything from a student uploading a Django key on their first project to massive risks, AWS keys, Google keys, things that access to databases, things that are really significant for companies.
All right, we got a call that just came in. Hold on. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you about to say something, DJ?
No. This is great to hear. The problem that you're describing is really real.
All right, we got a call just came in.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
All right. I don't know if everyone got a chance to look through all these. They look pretty spectacular, these bad ideas, but 2 have significantly been voted up more so than the others. So I'm going straight to these 2, and here we go. I'm going to start with you, DJ. You have to answer this. Remember, you're playing the Department of Yes. You want to accept this idea. You can't be facetious. We want to know why you want to do this, and I am the judge and jury as to whether I think your suggestion is good. So here we go. First one. Oh, by the way, whoever this is, please speak up because we're going to want you to come on at 40 minutes past the hour. All right. Excuse me. Here it is. Do testing only when the application has been rolled out. This way you have real environment setting and don't need to simulate traffic. Why is this a good idea? Why do you want to do this?
Oh, that's actually that is a good idea. And I'm not being facetious at all here, because like if we use blue-green environments and we're pushing that code into a green environment, then that's where we should test. It is like production, even though customers can't see it. Let's do some chaos experiments and continuous verification on it as well.
Excuse my ignorance. What is a blue-green environment?
Oh, so blue-green environment is basically, production or what the customers see being blue. It's live, it's active, and green being a complete mirror of that environment. So basically both are production, except one is internal acceptance and one is externally accessible. So it's a great DR plan. So if you put something out to production, it doesn't work, you flip them back. And it's a perfect place to start running some chaos tests and continuous verification, UI regression tests, all that kind of thing. So yeah, let's do it in production.
It's not far off. It's because it's not too far off of chaos testing too, as you just remembered. Nope. Good answer. Mackenzie, why do you want to do this?
When it comes to, I think if we're talking about testing before we roll out into production, then we're going to be using different environment settings. As DJ just said, we have different services that we're using if we're using pre-prod services, so that we can increase the chance of our application breaking by testing in these pre-prod environments. Therefore, by ensuring that we only test in our production-ready environments, then
the live customer facing,
then we ensure that the bugs that we find are real and valid.
Not fake bugs. Oh, yeah! I like that. All right. Let's go the other way. Whoops, hold it here. Go back. Okay. I'll have you answer this one first, Mackenzie. Oh, by the way, who was that? I didn't see. Who was that first one? Did we find out? Andrew, tell me in the back channel. All right. Only use, this is for you, Mackenzie, only use obscure libraries in your code. The more obscure, the better, because less chance of being exploited. A classic security versus obscurity, or security by obscurity, excuse me, what I meant to say. Mackenzie, why do you want to do this?
Oh, absolutely. This is a great idea because when it comes to vulnerabilities in your libraries or dependencies, often attackers really rely on what's been publicly disclosed and the lack of organizations maintaining and patching and making sure that all these libraries are up to date. So by using these really obscure libraries, then we're taking away one of the tools that hackers use, which is that public disclosure of vulnerabilities so that there's no executable, downloadable exploits ready to go for these attackers.
All right. Sir, yes, sir. Good. I like it. DJ, what do you got for me?
Massively
Obscure
awesome
libraries.
idea. Yeah. I think what we can do to ensure that we're actually making it as obscure as possible is we'll create an automated script in our build process that appends a few characters on the end, maybe some spaces of all of our code, or morphs it just a little bit so that we have a different hash code. Then nobody can match it to any security vulnerabilities. I think it's great. Great idea.
Don't match it to any security vulnerabilities. I like it. Hold on.
We've got a winner.
Great job, DJ. I'm proud of you. Excellent work there. All right. The crowd is excited. We're very, very happy about what both of you did. You both played well. I don't know. The second one was mine. Brian Colt. Brian Colt was the second. We do not know who the first one is. Is the first one going to speak up? Maybe you can scroll back, Andrew, and figure out who actually submitted that. Let's find out. Let's go back into our questions. Tons more questions. Here we got. All right, this one's just been voted up from Amol Naik. Where do you add, quote, secure code training for devs in the secure code roadmap? How do you measure the effectiveness? I'll start with you, DJ.
Oh, man. I think part of that is as you start introducing your education or training program, you have to look at where your vulnerabilities or your defects, configuration issues, even the quality, how that is, how that's adjusted relative to the training people are getting, right? So like take, for example, Kubernetes security. You're just starting migrating things to containers. Having the existing knowledge, you might have a bunch of security issues, configuration issues. You can use automated tools to detect those. And then as we start getting the education programs rolled out and people taking those courses, we can actually start correlating that to people and saying, hey, are they committing, these things, or have they learned? So there's a bit of a tangible connection that you can have between them. And the other thing is use short graphs to actually track quality as an element of security, because security is just an attribute of quality. We can call it anything else, but it's just as important as testing. It's sort of the same thing, right? QA testing, regression testing, and security is all part of testing. It's quality. But use a short graph to actually track vulnerabilities and how they reduce the upper control, lower control limits, and see how if that's actually narrowing as you start going forward with the training programs. All
right. Mackenzie, anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I think DJ covered it really well. The direct answer to the question is where to add it. I'd just say at the beginning and at every step along the way.
There you go. Okay,
well, ongoing process.
We get tons of questions. I want to try to get through as many of these as we possibly can. Oh, one from my list, and I don't know if we address this, and let's just sort of get a quick answer to this, Mackenzie. What can static scanning tools fail to uncover? Where are they failing? I mean, they go to a certain level and then they drop off.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and be quick to this one. There's certain vulnerabilities that SAST tools can uncover. The number one, if you look at the research that OWASP is of what vulnerabilities were found and where, by what method, we can see that static application testing is great for injection or cross-site scripting, those types of areas. But when we're talking about insecure data, when we're talking about indirect object references and business logic, these things we really can't rely on these tools for. So there's a range of it, and static application security testing needs to be part of your tool set, and it needs to be separate from trying to find sensitive information, because unlike, static application security testing just does the very last version, the current app, where we can have vulnerabilities in our code that are buried in history. So we need a different tool to be able to uncover that.
By the way, we uncovered Roland was the first bad idea, and Brian, they'll come on in just literally a minute. A quick answer from you, and then we're going to be have the face-off. DJ.
Yeah, I think static analysis and security testing is not one of the most essential things to do. Sonatype did a state of the software supply chain a couple years back. And they found that 85 to 97% of code is open source components or things that your developers don't write internally, right? So that leaves 3 to 15% of things that your developers actually use to stitch together code. And that's where SAST should be applied. So if you're looking at an overall risk perspective, do I implement as an enterprise static analysis first or open source scanning? The answer is really clear on that. So not that you can't avoid SaaS because it's a compliance thing, but focus on where the risk is and really know where that is.
All right, Andrew, bring on both Roland and Brian, and we'll essentially play the fates off. And essentially, they are the Roland is the one who had the first bad idea of going live. And don't deal with simulated data, have the real data. And Brian's bad idea was obscure libraries as well. So invites sent. They've just been sent. Let me remind everybody, if you have not clicked on the link at the bottom of the screen, please do that now so you can register for the one in 3 weeks from now. That'll be our next one. And then in addition, by the way, I'm interested to know how many people are actually going to be showing up at Black Hat. Just chime in the chat room if you're going to be at Black Hat. Roland, we're just getting a little bit of background noise from you, but hopefully you might want to mute when you're not talking and speak of when you are talking. All right. Are you muted? I'm still hearing it, whatever it is. Well, no, you're not muted because we do hear you still. Brian, there you go. Now you've been. Brian, okay. We'll start with, actually, Roland, we're going to start with you since you were first. You were the one with the idea of going straight live, no simulated data. Roland, give it to us. Why is yours truly the worst, causes the most horrible damage? Give it to us.
So there are two reasons. On the one hand, it's quite simple. When you do find any errors and faults in production, that's the most costly one. Mm-hmm. And the second one is you get the feedback of the people at once. The customers are going to suffer whenever you come up with an application that's not working well.
All right, good. Please go on mute for a second. And then, all right, Brian, give us your argument. Why is yours the worst?
Well, you said it best, David. It's security through obscurity. It's a classic strategy, however flawed that it is, but it's one of my favorites to go to for bad ideas.
All right, okay. I will go with you, Mackenzie. Which one do you think is truly the worst? Security through obscurity or going straight live?
I'm gonna have
Again,
to go
it's a what's
with,
worse scenario. They both stink. One's going to cause more damage.
I think I'm going to go with security through obscurity for this one. I think
your reasoning is
the worst idea. Well, the reasoning is because it sounds like a good idea to some people, and I think that this is a bit flawed. Is that because you can come up with justification for doing this, then it can be used by a lot of people, and it's actually used by a lot of people, but is completely flawed in the application of it because, as we know, that the hackers have more time, they have more resources than we give them credit for. And so obviously they will always find a way in.
All right, DJ, which one do you think is worse?
So I actually think that the push to test has some good quality, or push to production has some good quality elements, right? But I think part of that is we could track defect and escape rate. But I think that's a borderline. I think we got, it's part good, part bad, as part of some of the next generation deployments. I do think security by obscurity wins. One of the examples behind that is, have you ever heard a developer say base 64 encryption? It's base 64 encoding, and they'll try to obscure something which can be easily unobscured, right? So I think that it's been a classic problem for years. It's something that we need to address, and that's either education or automated tools. But I think that's the one that wins for me.
Congratulations to Brian Colt. Both. By the way, Roland, no slight to you. Yours was plenty horrible.
That's a great example of reality in some places. Right?
I think both of their examples definitely happen in the real world. There's for sure. So kudos to both of you. Thank you both, Brian and Roland. We have just about 17 minutes left. Let's take. Do we have the poll of the good ideas? Yes, the good idea poll is up. So please vote on those. And if you vote on those, and we're going to address those in just a second. Let me just ask, reflect the past year, both you, DJ and Mackenzie. What do you think has been, we've seen significant problems around coding. The problems of coding, I think this past year really has been the year of sort of coding is getting its due in terms of visibility with breaches. Because it's kind of bled into the mainstream, which I don't think we've ever seen before. What do you think has been do you think that's good that we're now seeing it visible even in the mainstream? And then B, what has been the most positive move towards combating this, Mackenzie? And it could just be one. Just give me one example to dealing with this.
So, I mean, look, I do think it's obviously not great that we're seeing a lot of this coming out in the mainstream, but the awareness has certainly increased up. It's particularly on that lower level of the developers. So that's definitely one of the kind of the great benefits that we're seeing in this area. So, I mean, there's some positives coming from it from that perspective, but I still think that
possibly budget, actually.
Yeah. No, there is, and there are increasing amounts of budget coming to see this, particularly trying to deal with security at a ground level. And so, I mean, over the last year, but the positives that we're coming out, we're also seeing large companies really bring in security into the mainstream too. We're seeing it with GitHub. GitLab has always had some security features in there. So we're seeing action actually take step from this and going forward.
Okay. DG, let me ask you, have you had people who are in the non-developer space asking you questions that you have not had these people approach you in the past and within the past year? I'm interested to know, has your popularity increased to the non-developer audience?
I think, to answer your question, I think it's always been app security being a little bit of a outsider. Like if you look at app security 10 years ago in the security space, didn't exist, right? Count how many people, you could count on one hand how many AppSec people you had, with your GRC, your third party risk government, your SOC and all this kind of thing. But what we're seeing now is we have the ability to detect vulnerabilities because the tool set has actually matured in the past 6 or 7 years, right? Before we do a static scan and it would take 48 hours. And now it takes, milliseconds in some situations, but getting that information to the right place, like, detecting policy issues and tying that back to GRC. I think that's becoming a reality that we're seeing a lot more in larger security organizations. So for example, like, do I have an encrypted key on my S3 bucket? Detecting that policy and tying it back to, HIPAA, high trust, SOC certifications, whatever, SOC 2, and saying, we're actually doing what we say we're going to do. And then I think the translation between the, thou shalt do this on the GRC side to implement this way in the development community, I think is starting to become more linked. So, to answer your question, I think that the conversations are starting and people are treating AppSec like a first-class citizen now in the security organization.
Years ago, I did a video at Black Hat. This just goes about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And by the way, I noticed a lot of people are going to be at Black Hat this year. And the question I asked on the floor, and keep in mind the majority of people at Black Hat are security professionals, not developers. But I asked, should security and developers be in couples counseling together? And everyone universally said yes, they should be. But what many of them said, and this, by the way, this line does not work in couples counseling, if any of you have actually been in it, was, well, if they just listen to me. So, which I was always amused by because, well, it doesn't really work that way. So what more could security people learn from developers if they listen to them, Mackenzie?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. There needs to be a two-way dialogue going in here. And I think that how developers use the tools that are given to them and the constraints that they have. What we see is that security teams will give developers tools to use that are too cumbersome, that create too many false positives or restrict them too much. Developers are creative. We come up with a way to find a way around these things. So I think what security engineers can kind of listen to developers is that understand the workflow and just know that if the tool is too cumbersome for them to use, that it's not going to be used. So they need to understand that workflow, as frustrating as it may be for everyone to have that conversation.
DJ, what can we learn?
Well, I love the comment from Richard that, sorry, we've been divorced for years, but the thing is we still have we still have children that we have to take care of together. So we got to have some communication there. But that analogy aside, I've taken the approach where AppSec and security has to have an engineering approach to implementing security. If a tool is put in and takes more than 15 seconds, 2 minutes, developers are going to rip it out. And I saw an example of that again at a Fortune 10 company I worked at, where we had a security scan take 48 hours. And so people just said, hey, we're going to take this out of the pipeline because we got to get this stuff to production. So this is the whole idea of removing security tools to fix, quote, problems. And that's a mandate from above. We can't be like, the Oracle on top of the mountain or Zeus saying, you need to implement security. We have to work together to say, how do you do your work and how do we enable you to keep doing your work, but still get the information we need to make sure quality and the security element is taken care of.
Question came in from Ian Pointer. This one was voted up. What role should traditional QA departments play in security? And I thought they have to play a role, but it's not so clear, is it? Mackenzie?
Well, quality assurance, it's definitely a part of the security team. I think that people can it's one of those things where you have a joint custody of a kid where the security team stays at his and developers say they're mine as well. So you have, a little bit of friction, but it becomes this important part, and quality assurance in code is incredibly important when we're making sure that everything's testing, everything works as possible so that we can run application tests, that we can find these security vulnerabilities within there. So, the role can also be a little bit of a bridging ground too, because, quality of code is not just there to discover security bugs, and it's not just there to improve your application. It's there to improve the overall experience and security and performance of the application. So, I think they can fit into playing a role into making mom and dad play nice a bit.
All right. I want to quote someone, and I don't know who I'm quoting, so please speak up, but this was definitely the most voted up good idea in our poll. Utilize a comprehensive requirements and design, in parentheses, regardless of whether you use SDLC or agile methodologies, and address the needs of all stakeholders, parentheses, including the security team. Who said that? By the way, this all makes sense, but isn't this like what he described the good idea is like, yeah, that's what we're all trying to achieve. It's really hard to get there, right, DJ?
To me, that sounded like waterfall. There's creative ideas to get there. I definitely like the idea. Everyone has to be informed, but I think we have to do that with the least possible noise and the most relevant information to the most relevant stakeholders, right? Develop a RACI for your product and identify who's accountable and responsible and all these kind of things, and then give the appropriate information to those folks. And the stakeholders again, look at collecting real-time KPIs and metrics and risk scores, tying back into the quality question. Can we get to the point where we can determine release risk or risk around an application's quality or infrastructure risk, and how does that tie to code coverage? Like if we can get that kind of information, then we can start making higher level decisions and disseminate that information to the right people, things that we have to be concerned with. That's a complex problem to solve, and you can get really noisy with that.
Agree, but I got a question that was more specific to the Git Guardian environment, and then we're going to be wrapping this up in just a few minutes. What is it of the world of secrets, Jackson, that is, I guess, is more unknown to companies that it is happening, or it's being more introduced today that they should be wary of?
So I think what companies really need to be kind of wary of is activity that's happening outside of their control. And I'm meaning that like on the personal repositories of their employees. So in the study that we did at Git Guardian, we found that 80% of corporate leaks, so 80% of API keys that belong to an organization are leaked on a personal developer's public repository. But the challenge here is that you don't have any authority over that person's repository. You can't enforce the security rules on there. You can't it's very hard. You can put policies in place, but it's not up to you whether or not that person follows them on their personal repositories. So we need to extend security beyond the organization. We can't just look at an internal repositories and everything. We need to look beyond it and extend our parameter to really kind of capture everything that's happening on it. Because as we've said multiple times, as DJ said at the start, and I'm bringing it back, you're one click away from making a repository public, and so that can be on an organization level or can be on a personal level.
All right, we are going to wrap this up. We are 5 minutes to go. By the way, if you have not clicked that button at the bottom to register for next week's Friday video chat, literally do it this very second, because Andrew's going to change it in about 30 seconds. All right, here's what you need to know. Let me just hold it, bringing this all up. Whoops. Next chat will be Friday, August 13th. So that's 3 weeks from now. This week I'm moving. Next week is Black Hat DEF CON. And so the week after that, we'll be doing this again. It'll be Hacking Cloud Infrastructure, an hour of critical thinking about how identity is your front line of defense for your infrastructure. Remember, if you register early for that, you are automatically entered, and early is essentially the Tuesday before, you're automatically entered into a raffle to win a CISO series jacket. But don't worry, because Andrew's going to change that right now. He just did it. Look at that. Stick around for the meetup. Click the link at the bottom. You can do that right now. Again, click that link. You register. You get online. We all get together and we have our one-on-one meetup here. It is a lot of fun. If you've never done it before, it's super fun. You're missing out if you haven't done it. So please join us. And also don't feel that you don't know enough to join. There is nothing. Trust me, we have all people of all walks, even with zero security experience, that join in this. We want you to be around. Tell your friends to join us if they've never come. The more the merrier. It's a lot of fun. This has been a super active chat room. Thank you, everybody. This has been fantastic. And by the way, did I not? I think it was Andrew Aiken was the one who came up with that good idea. I didn't signal you. Yes, Andrew Aiken was that good idea that we were just discussing. So thank you, Andrew, for that. And huge thanks to our sponsor, GetGuardian. Thank you very much for sponsoring. If you want to sponsor a video chat, guess what? You can email me at david@cisoseries.com, and we can make that happen. It's a lot of fun. All right, we have just a few minutes left. So in just 1 minute, Mackenzie, we'll start with you. Anything you want to sort of wrap up, and also any thing they can learn more about GetGuardian, an offer from GetGuardian, anything like that, and how to follow up with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the greatest things about the GitGuardian at the moment is that if you're a large company and you want visualization into the problem that you have, you can get a free demo using your own data. So if you want to understand how secrets are sprawling within your employees, how they're sprawling within your organization, then you can actually get immediately that visualized. And so I think that's probably one of the, if you're interested in understanding that problem, getting over to the GitGuardian website and interacting with the sales guys there, they will organize that for you. And if you're a team with less than 25 developers, GitGuardian is free for you to use the internal monitoring project. So
look at that.
Yeah, definitely check that out.
All right, so free, just like a drug dealer. Excellent. So
we get you hooked.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I'm just DJ. Any last? Just a minute. We got here.
You know, if I could give one piece of advice, or even two pieces of advice to everybody, first is focus on open source and know what you have, and definitely look into bill of materials. It's going to become very important over the next few years to understand what you have in the software you create and what you have in the software that you're consuming and that you're bringing in. I think there's a big risk around that, and if you're going to start anywhere, start with that.
Look at that. Dan needs some GetGuardian. That's good. That's some credit right there.
I'm going to go and download it and get things going right after this. It's great.
All right. I want to thank my two guests, DJ Schleen, who is with Village MD, and Mackenzie Jackson, who is with GetGuardian. By the way, how do they follow up with both of you? Mackenzie, DJ, quick. What's the best way to connect with you?
At Advocate Mac, so on Twitter and LinkedIn, or
spell Advocate, and then how do you spell Mac? M-A what?
M-A-C-K.
Quickly put it in the chat. And then DJ, what's the best way to connect with you?
Twitter, DJ Schleen.
DJ, so put that also in the chat as well. All right, we're wrapping this up. That means everybody click that link at the bottom and join us in the meetup portion. It just takes me about 30 seconds to move everything over, but you'll see me come on screen over there. Thanks again to DJ, to Mackenzie, to everybody else. Please join us in the meetup. We want to see you there. And I'll see you again 3 weeks from now right here